So I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna pass the mic to you, and you wanted to talk about wrestling then and wrestling now.
Okay. So a little thing I've been doing is like I'm gonna make this pretty much like pretty much like a weekly thing, but I'm comparing wrestling from when I was watching wrestling in another bygone era,
Mm-hmm.
and comparing it to how it's now and how it's so different. And I started with 2005, February the 7th, I want to say, SmackDown. And the reason why I chose this is before John Cena got his WWE Championship. And people like Kurt Angle, Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, and guys like RVD are still in the WWE. And it's to see that lineup and roster be there and be ready to go. It's like kind of wild to me, man. And I'm happy to see them all there. And one thing I've noticed about that era of WWE is one, they're doing a lot of stuff you can't do now because it's not, it's not considered. At the time, it wasn't considered offensive. Now it would be. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But I could tell that a lot of guys were improvising and just saying stuff because they know they can work the crowd into doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And the greatest example of it would be John Cena.
Mm-hmm.
John Cena had a lot of charisma to himself and worked his character to the point to where he would just be saying stuff and letting the crowd finish his lines. And another thing I noticed about this, wrestling matches lasted 10 minutes max, and on top of that, the show was only 120 minutes. It was like pretty much a movie.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't exceed over 2 hours, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, well, not 120. Sometimes it was like less than that. But to get to the point, though, wrestling was more condensed and it was more focused. And on top of that, everybody had a lane to shine in, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt like it was and it was only 5 matches. And then on top of that, these 5 matches, everybody had at least a storyline, or at least everybody had a purpose to being there. Instead of just like, all right, you two are out here, go wrestle. All right, then we're going to have a whole entire 20-minute talking segment between two people we really quite don't care about. And I'm noticing these are the 2 big things that I noticed that WWE now kind of does. Understandably, it's evolved to be this way because they're chartered for that time slot. But it's just like, god dang, man, it's a whole new world, man.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, like you said, back in the day, it was a 2-hour show, and oh, you can continue.
Oh yeah.
I'm choking,
All
yo.
right, so no, not like this. But to continue though, the reason why I chose this particular segment, because all right, I got to see the baby faces and I got to see the heels. And the heels, there were more heels than baby faces, and they were all put in positions of like, dang, how are we gonna overcome this? Because Kurt Angle was one of the biggest scumbags out there. He used to have a weekly show where pretty much some random nobody would go up against him and get slaughtered by him every other week.
Mm-hmm.
And then the WWE champion at the time, or the heavyweight champion, was JBL.
Mm-hmm.
And JBL snaked his way into getting every single championship win. He beat Eddie Guerrero for the belt. He beat Chris Benoit, Undertaker, and he kept finding ways to just beat these guys and just pretty much being like, I am the greatest wrestler of all time. And I'm like, what? Mm-hmm. And everybody knew it, but it was cool to see that. And on top of that, Rey Mysterio was around. He was a lot younger. And seeing him being able to move around to work the way he did is amazing, because it's like, it's not too much different from what it is now. Granted, it is a bit slowed down for him now, but back then he pretty much could work with anybody and still be successful.
Mm-hmm.
And I think another cool thing about WWE back in that era, though, is just like everybody had their own, personality. Then they worked it to every point of their character. Because a grand example would be your entrance. A lot of times entrances weren't weren't just guys running down the ramp. It was like, guys have fireworks, pyrotechnics, or if not, they would do a lot with the crowd. You could see them mouthing off to him a lot. You could see them, getting into it. A grand example is I got to see SmackDown go to Japan. Kurt Angle didn't care to be there because he's supposed to be the American heel. He's like, why am I even here? But then you guys got guys like Funaki, and you got I forgot another wrestler, and Eddie Guerrero. The crowd popped and went wild because a lot of those guys have wrestled there, and they're pretty much like legends. And they would do a lot of things to the crew, do a lot of things and work for the crowd. Top of that, like I said, matches were only 11 minutes max. They weren't. Everybody didn't get a 20-minute match, and I kind of understand that. The 20-minute matches are supposed to be pretty much a main event.
Yeah,
it's pretty much supposed to be like, this is the biggest build up for care people to do this, to do their thing and show off their skills. And that's what I kind of appreciate, because at least when you got like a match where it's not the biggest stars, you can get a lot of high points, and you can get pretty much run through the motions of like what they can and can't do, and see how creative they can be to getting a win. So that's one of my number one things I liked about wrestling then. You got any questions though, since I'm watching wrestling now? I think watching then and now.
Yeah, like before, see, note to self, I got to make sure I bring water every time I do a podcast now. But okay,
Yeah.
so what I was going to say is, I liked your point in the beginning when you talked about how the show used to be 2 hours compared to nowadays how the show is 3 hours. It seemed like the show is stretched out too long nowadays. I remember when I was a kid, and I don't think it was just because we were kids. I think the shows were actually 10 times better back in the past because the time slot was shorter. That means that in that time slot, the wrestlers had to make the most out of it. Like, I feel like nowadays, which could be a credit to Vince in a sense, is that Vince tries to get all the wrestlers to be a part of the show. But it seemed like in the past, it was like the only people that would be a part of the show is whoever's going to make the show 10 times better, who's going to make it a great show. So that means a lot of great wrestlers in the past, or a lot of good wrestlers, will be left off the show. It seemed like nowadays Vince is like, okay, we're trying to get as much of our roster a part of each event. And it seems like it kind of, it makes the show a little drawn out and not as entertaining as the shorter shows in the past. And also, that's one thing I definitely agree with. And then also to add to that, I feel like you said, it seemed like they in the past they improv'd a lot more. And I'm not sure. I feel like some of that is, at least from listening to the interviews, like from Dean Ambrose, or like just the different interviews, they say like now a lot of it's scripted, and which I can't even, I can't discredit the wrestlers for not being like improvising as much, because it seemed like that's what the WWE is, they're actually kind of doing that now. They're writing up the wrestlers and what they say, and not really letting them improv too much. So I mean, that's probably more of a management side. They need to fix that and just let the wrestlers kind of be themselves a lot more, or trusting them some more, and they may and see what they can do. But obviously back in the past, it seemed like it was a lot more wrestlers that was charismatic. But I don't know if that's just because management allowed them to freestyle a lot more, or is it just the wrestlers was more charismatic. So, but yeah.
I think it has to do with like it isn't so tightly locked. Like they're not being, generated to do this type of thing. You know what I'm saying? It feels like they are on a set path, but it's not totally scripted. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I feel like, but what would you say that nowadays that you like the most, I guess, about wrestling in a sense?
Well, I think the one thing I do like most about nowadays is the fact that, for one, let's just get this out the way. There's a lot more personality in the wrestlers' attire than there was back then. You know how many people came out in black trunks or something like that of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a myriad of dudes like Brian Crinja. I mean, like this is dude named Jindrak or whatever his name is, right?
Mm-hmm.
He was supposed to be one of the members of Evolution. This dude came out in the most generic of wrestling attires. And I'm just like, where does your personality speak?
Mm-hmm.
It's so crazy to me. I mean, I understand you got John Cena, you got Kurt Angle, you got those guys, but I'm like, bro, it feels like everybody else though feels like a Steve Austin clone or a Brock Lesnar clone with these a lot of those guys, and it's just like, come on, man, where is the anything to show off that you're different?
Mm-hmm.
Granted, you will have personalities like the Boogeyman, but god dang, nah. Because I'll give you a grand example. It'd be someone like Daniel Bryan in his heel phase. You could see it that he was trying to everywhere on his character that he was trying to go this eco-friendly route, and on top of that, I'm just like a hippie dude.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say there's another thing I would like about the newer era of wrestling though that we're in is that at least everybody at least has a chance for us to get to know you. Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
That's what made me kind of like look at guys like, you know, EC3 for example. When he came into the WWE, I got to know him a little bit, but that little short amount of time, it made me get invested into who he is,
Mm-hmm.
which is Ethan Chandler III, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And same with Bobby Roode, depending on how you want to go about it. And that's once again, once he was down in NXT and he made his way to the main roster, I got to know him and I got to like him more. Versus back then, hey man, you're lucky if you got screen time. You're lucky if you lost to Kurt Angle. That's how bad it was back then.
Mm-hmm.
And they would give you very little screen time, and typically you lost, or if not, it was very hard for you to have a good interview, or if not, they'll give you these terrible gimmicks. Grand example, you ever heard of Vito?
Vito, no. I mean, it sounds familiar, but I can't remember. I can't recall who that is.
That is SmackDown's cross-dressing wrestler.
Oh, okay, yep, I don't remember.
Yeah. And his whole gimmick was he was a guy that liked dressing in women's clothes. I'm just like, all right. This is the kind of stuff you're trying to get to the guy. You're just trying to assassinate this guy's entire career. You're not even trying.
It's like, is this your king? Is this your king?
Oh, God.
But,
Oh,
yeah.
man.
I feel like for me, like some of the stuff that I like about nowadays is I like how athletic the wrestlers are. I like how great they're skilled inside the ring. The only thing I have a problem with is, though, compared to the wrestling in the past, I feel like the wrestling in the past, they were able to tell a story inside the ring a lot better than nowadays. Nowadays, there's a lot of great athletic wrestlers that can hit all these flips, that can do anything inside and outside the ring, but it's just like all of them are very like they look like they all dang near probably was gymnastics and was part of gymnastics, all that type of stuff. But it's just like I just feel like they lack the storytelling inside the ring, but they're great in-ring wrestlers though. But yeah, that's what one of the biggest things that stand out to me from wrestling then and now when it comes to in-ring wrestling.